Now record is on. Okay, so today you've made it through. It's the final day.
Woohoo!
um, so what we're gonna do today is some fun stuff. Not that the rest of it wasn't fun, but we are going to talk about the things that you turned in. Those of you that turned things in. Then we are going to talk about how to do color bullets. We're going to spend some time on special effects and doing some art corrections. We're going to talk briefly about separations because we could spend like, a year talking about that. So we're just going to talk about that briefly, and then we're going to go back and any questions that you guys posted that we missed, we'll have time to talk about those as well. But as always, if you have a question as we go along, let me know. And if you have a question and you didn't get it posted up in the classroom, post it in the chat here now today, and we can talk about it too. Sorry, the cat's doing something stupid over here. Okay, so we will start with the day versus night. We'll have Brian share his screen, and we'll just go over and review those real quick.
All right. Any second now, it should be popping up.
Cat, stop.
She woke up just in time for our class. That's so like her.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Day versus night homework. Looks like we're looking at Jesse's first. Looks really good to me. I'm taking it all in. First of all, it's really obvious that one side is day and one side is night. So that's well done. Looks like the lighting on the figure looks like it shifts appropriately. Looks really good. I like the lights in the windows of the buildings on the night side.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Might have been cool to have like headlights or brake lights on a couple of those cars at night, just for effect, but that's okay. Um,
I can't see the Photoshop screen. Uh
no, no one can. I shared my
oh.
whole
No,
screen.
I think everybody else can. So
Oh, okay. I was
yeah.
like, what?
Okay. You didn't quite know how to define the headlights yet.
Mhm.
Yet.
That's
Today.
right. Today's the day. Um, Might have been cool to see a little bit stronger shadows under the cars, but overall, I think this is really successful. Um, you know, the best way you can tell if it works is like there's nothing that's jumping out as being wrong,
Right.
right? That's the thing. You when you the reader is looking at your comics, if they do that thing like something's not right, that's always a problem, and I'm not seeing that. If I had any kind of like constructive criticism, I would say there could be more contrast between like the light side and the dark side of the buildings just to give it a little bit more depth. Um, but I mean, that's nitpicking. Overall, I think this looks really nice. So well done.
Agreed. Lauren, did you get it worked out? You might try pinning it. Maybe pin the thing instead. Looks like everybody else can see it.
I am working on that.
Okay.
All right, so here is Dave's. And so, first of all, just based on color choices, we can tell which side is day and which side is night. So that's very good. Looks like maybe didn't get too much done on the backgrounds. So it's hard to tell from that, but it looks like, working on the idea of putting some lights in the windows and lights on cars and things like that. So that's good. Um, Going by the figure, there's some good ideas here with the lighting. I would say there's a couple of challenges, like if we look on the daytime side, if the light's hitting her shoulder and the top of her chest and the top of her knee, maybe it's not on the front of her face. Maybe the light's coming down more from the side or something. So it's just a little places where the lighting choices are fighting each other. So it takes practice. Um, so just as you're rendering figures, just make sure that the light source is consistent across the figure. It can be confusing when you're switching from like the yellow area to the gray area and then to the face and the hair. So it just takes a little practice. Uh, I think the lighting on the figure on the night side one is pretty nice. Not too bad there. Um, with so little of the background done, it's hard to tell how she works within that environment. But based on where you place the moon, she works with that moonlight. So obviously, if you had more time, we could see how it all turn out. But it's definitely a good start. All right, I'm not sure whose this one is, but you can claim it in the chat or raise a hand, and Christy will see you. Um, all right, so I would say one of the challenges here is there's there's so little done with the background, and especially the skies, that just at first glance, it's really difficult to tell if one is day and one is night. Um, so we're sort of like losing the main encompassing point of the lesson here. Um, with that said, it looks like you got quite a bit of work done on the figure, and the light sourcing is sort of like switching from the day to the night side, so that helps quite a bit. Um, Obviously, it'd be nice if we could see some rendering on the hair and the face and some of the other elements to really know that you're grasping all the concepts. But from what is done here, it looks like it's going in the right direction. This one is Clinda's. All right, so obviously, like right away, you can tell day and night sides. That's really good. I like the idea of the crescent moon versus the full moon. That's an interesting choice. I think it works out well. Good definition on the buildings. Could always be a little bit more bold with the contrast, but it's definitely there and you can see it. So that's nice. The dust or smoke coming up out of the ground looks very voluminous. Also well done.
Voluminous, wow.
And-
The headlights, will show you another way to do those today.
right. Yeah, the idea with the taillights, that was the right idea. So that's good.
I was looking at that car backwards.
The figure on the daytime side overall looks pretty good. I would say the color saturation and the intensity and the contrast are there. A little bit of a challenge to see, maybe like it'd be nice to see a bit more light across like the tops of her arms and elbows and things, just to help define the form, but also just put her in that setting a little bit more. And then again, I question how much light's on the front of the face with her head tilted down and everything, if this is a daytime scene. But you know, you could sell that to me more if like you were letting her bangs cast a shadow, like there's a sunlight coming down, it's hitting the hair, and then the hair is blocking it from part of the face or something like that. But otherwise, with her head tilted down, it's kind of hard to sell that idea. Rendering on the hair looks pretty nice. The water looks good. Good use of shadows on the ground. They could probably be, there's some like placement issues, but the concept of the shadows is good, especially on Wonder Woman. Nighttime side, looks like you struggled with screen color choice a little bit there.
She's nodding, yes.
But the actual like position of the lighting, I think looks good overall, and is convincing that it's nighttime. So, and I think the uplighting on the face works much better.
She said she got lost on the boots.
Yeah,
At first I read that as boobs, but it was boots.
Yeah, you know, those boots have all this like straps and mechanical stuff put over top of them. So sometimes you have to ignore those details and just work from the general to the specific. So, you know, the boot from her ankle up towards her shin is just like a cylinder. And so that part can be easy. And then you have to then start to think about like the side of her foot versus the bottom of her foot. And so just break it down into like simple, easier to conceive forms, and work on getting lighting on those forms before stressing about the details or anything. It'll make it a little easier if you approach it that way. But overall, I'd say this is successful and definitely a step in the right direction. Here's another one.
Ooh,
MD.
trippy.
Who's MD? I can't remember who MD is. Yeah, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so super obvious day and nights. That's good. I like all the time spent on the clouds and the sky and the moon and stuff like that. That really works well. Good contrast on the daytime buildings. I think it's pretty easy to see the light side from the dark side there.
Mm-hmm.
The smoke is a little iffy, the smoke and dust. I mean, good use of like texture brush.
But maybe a little over.
Well, I'm just not sure that it's following the form that the artist has drawn. And that's one of our big challenges as colorists, is if we're coloring our own art or we're coloring someone else's art, the light and the shadow and the rendering have to follow what's in the artwork. And if it doesn't, then it can be a little either less successful or harder for the reader of the comic to understand. And I think that's what's going on here with the smoke. There's some really cool ideas there. They just need to follow the artwork a little bit better. Lighting on the figure overall is pretty good, I'd say. Like to see a little bit more focus on tool control, seeing lots of like little brush strokes and one stroke is maybe following one direction and one's going another direction, and just getting a little lost on where the core highlights are and the rim lights and stuff like that. So little bit of tool control issue there, but I think the hair looks really good, and overall the figure's good. It just could use a little bit of finesse. That's a good word. I was gonna say refinement, but finesse is
So
definitely
I
the word.
get paid the big bucks.
The night side overall good. I like the concept of like the pink purple nighttime lighting.
It's groovy.
I'm not sure what we're seeing here could be printed, so that's something to consider.
Yeah, that purple sky probably.
I know there was a question about illegal colors. We could actually talk about that right now. So if you hear people in the comic or print industry talk about illegal colors, what they're talking about are colors that can't be printed. And how that happens is that our monitors are capable of, the glow light, right? They project light and color out of the screen at us, and they can create, brightness, saturation, contrast, that is impossible to reproduce when you're looking at ink printed on paper reflecting off of whatever the ambient light is in the room, right? So an illegal color just means any color that can't be printed, and that can be that it's too bright, too saturated, and saturation can be lightness, or it can be like bright saturation. It can also be dark, right? It can be too much ink to print, and it can also be contrast, right? Because the screen can lull us into this false sense of security when we're looking at our monitors, that we think we're seeing contrast, and then when we go to print and we're on that dull paper, and a lot of that contrast goes away. So you have to take all that into consideration, and I'm just looking and thinking some of these pinks and purples are probably too bright or too saturated or both, to print. So it's a good idea, but it would probably need a little experimentation to make it print ready.
Well, and if you're just doing this as an online thing, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
But it's if it has to go to print, right?
Yeah. So.
And Jesse, I know you asked that question, and we can actually look in Photoshop and talk again about it a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay, so there's the day-night challenges. I think overall really well done.
AKA avoid all exclamation colors. Sort of. Not in your screen tones. Your screen tones don't matter. So
Right.
if you get them when you're choosing your screen tone, it doesn't matter. But in general,
For your flat colors, your
for
base
flat
colors.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But we'll also talk about how it decides what's an illegal color,
Yeah.
and if your settings are off, then
We'll
it
talk
doesn't
about
know.
that in
So,
just a few minutes.
all right.
So yes, but complicated, like everything else.
Yeah. Photoshop is so powerful that it gives you lots of ways to make mistakes. All right, so here's Battle Pug. This one's Clinda's. I'm loving this. I think this is really cool. So first of all, let's talk about atmospheric perspective, because that's something we talked about in the first 2 weeks of class. I think it's really well done here, right? Those mountains in the background and the sky really recede. Nice little crescent moon. The fire and the smoke is warmer than that background sky, so that helps push them forward and make them, easier for the viewer to see. And then you use some dark colors for the castles and stones, which creates contrast against that fire and smoke. It makes it easier for the viewer to see the fire and smoke. So I think those things are all really, really well done. I like the mix of lasso and brush technique that you've used on the ground. I like that the ground is brighter, closer to the fire, and gets less bright the farther away from the fire we get. Back to those illegal colors. Some of those greens might be too bright and saturated to print.
She's kind of laughing.
But the concept and the execution is there, so that's really good.
My only thing about the background is that perhaps maybe the particular blue-gray that you chose on the castle wall be a little bit more different than the blue-gray you chose on the mountains.
This is true.
Just visually to separate those things. So I don't think that, it's kind of wrapping around into it. And like the, what do you call those things? Towers that are sticking up are a little bit more brown-gray. And then the walls that have collapsed are a little bit more blue-gray. So I'm not sure if that's the same building, if it's a different building, if it's a different place. So maybe just a different color on those would kind of just help kind of put it all together.
I'm loving the technique that you used on Battle Pug to show the rendering as fur.
Yeah,
So I think that it looks really nice.
She says she would like to go back in and do more with that stonework. Yeah, that
I'm
takes
sure.
a while, I'm sure.
Also, the hair that you've started on the little girl is looking good so far, so nicely done there. Um, let's just look at the other panels real quickly. The villain's face, definitely on the right path. I would just say he's really animated and exaggerated, right? Really cartoony. So you did everything that we told you to do as we told you to do it. Um, just his smile is so big and bold that the roundness of his cheeks probably need to come up just a little bit wider and a little bit higher, to just to show that. But little nitpick there.
A little more ghoulish next time.
And the hero's face in the top right panel there, is looking good too. Could have just a little bit more contrast. Those bright lights could be a little bit brighter. Again, just because I would worry if it would be visible or not if it was
Right.
printed. But overall, very pleased with where you're at on this. And
Yeah, it's looking good.
I think if we could see it finished, it'd be even better. I like this. I don't remember if it was in the flats or not, but I like the way you kind of like outline the bushes in the top right with some of that green. I think that works out really well. So well done, you. Okay, here is Dave's. So let's just take this in for a second. First of all, it looks like you spent quite a bit of time on the grass and the ground and everything, with looks like lasso and brush or lasso and gradient. I think overall it's successful in showing us the depth that needs to be there. Um, I like that you chose to use a different shade of green in like the inset panels versus the main panel. That helps those be a little bit more visible. Uh, on the main panel, though, the intensity of the highlights on the green is sort of like the same at ground level as it is when we get all the way back up the hill to where Battle Pug and the little girl is. So we're losing a little bit of depth there. So don't forget, you can vary the intensity of the highlights and vary the intensity of the saturation when you're screening with your gradient tool or your brush to help create more depth of field.
Yeah, that's one of those things that we say but we don't really explain, and that is the fact that we taught a different lesson, and that's the reason why I thought of it. But you know, in the reality of this scene, they are very far away from that broken stone wall, right? They're up the valley from that broken stone wall. And if you're not careful, it looks like they're right next to it, right? So how do you put the depth? That's what Brian's saying. How do you show that they are way up here on the hill and then they go down and then there is that stone wall? So you have to put that depth in with color so people get that how far that is away.
Yeah, and the technique you're using is dead on. I see what you're doing. It just could be a little bit more bold and a little bit more variation.
I love those little flowers.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I love the idea of the flowers on there.
That's
and
super cute.
Yeah, well done. Good creative idea. Again, the technique on the smoke
I
is,
made a brush for the flowers. Good on you.
yeah, well done. The technique on the smoke is also good. Kind of like we were saying about the valley. Just keep going. Push it a little farther, but it's good. Similar to what we were saying before, like the value of the color of the castle is maybe too similar to the value of the mountain in the sky. Just want to see, what we're trying to create is a sense of depth. And so in the foreground, we've got our characters, right? And they're looking over everything that's happening in the midground, the castle and the fire and the smoke. And then everything else behind the castle and the fire and the smoke is the background, right? So we have these like three main levels. You could break it down more, but there's three really distinct levels of depth that we need to convey to the reader. And one of the ways we could do that is just to adjust those color values a bit. So
I think that, and this is true of not just you guys in this class, but so far pretty much all the classes we've ever taught. I think one of the hardest pieces on this particular spread is that above the falling down broken stone castle, there's that little roof, and then there's another roof with smoke coming out of it, and then there's that place in between those two, and that is the ground, right? But it's very hard to figure what that is visually because it doesn't make how can I explain this? The smoke looks like it connects to that ground instead of being on top of or above that ground. Do you see what I'm saying there? Do you know what I'm saying, Brian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
And so that's one of those hard places. And we're going to show you effects today that would help that a little bit, but you got to get the rendering right to figure out how that crumbling castle that's falling apart is in a different dimension than the ground, right? So it's above the ground, but the smoke is above all of that. So that's kind of a hard place on this particular page.
And then I like the last panel that you chose to do the side lighting on the
Mhm.
villain. Great creative idea, and the approach is looking good there. Um, Obviously, like everything else, just like to see if you had more time, what you could do with it. But it's definitely a good creative idea and sets the mood. And the smaller villains in the background, I like what you're doing with their faces as well. So lots of good like foundationary ideas here. So it'd just be fun if we had 2 more weeks or whatever to see how far you can push this one.
Jesse says his goal is to make a starry sky brush that he likes.
There you
He appreciated Dave's flowers, and then Clinton says, "I like the mood that you captured with this, Dave." So that's nice.
Yeah,
It
very
looked good.
nice. And let's see
This
here.
is Dave.
Here's Dave's other page. So, really, I mean, not too much more to add, but I say failed on the stars 4 times.
Yeah, Jesse.
Poor Jesse. Yeah, I won't talk your guys' ear off. So, all the same stuff. I think this is what's really nice is there's a lot done here. You've kind of touched on almost everything. It's like you're far enough along that you've set the tone and you've set the mood. You understand what things the readers should be looking at, what's important to the story. So from here, it would just be like building blocks to how far you wanted to take it. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of places the contrast is a little bit not enough if it was going to print.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
be a little bolder on your next pass. But yeah, it's looking really good.
Yeah, I think so.
Fun.
For sure.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, nicely done.
Well done. All right. So what we are going to do now is we're going to learn how to do color holds. Now, the beauty of color holds is that they are super easy.
They are?
Yes, they are. Well, if the art is easy, they're easy. If the art is well done. The thing about color holds is they used to be called knockouts because this is when you're changing the black line art to a particular color. And this is good for a lot of different reasons. You can do this for a variety of different things. But once you get the file set up, the process works like flatting. So that's what I mean by it's easier. You already know how to flat, and so then you'll know how to do color holds. So Brian's going to talk you through how to do it, how to set up the file, and then how they work. I gave you a folder today of material, and one of those things I gave you was called the Rocketeer. It is what's the name of that file, Brian? What's it say?
Rocketeer Spirit, I think for like 4 color holds or something.
Yeah,
or
4 color holds or something. That should be the giveaway. It says it in the title. But that is the one that we are going to play with the color holds on. So the first thing though is that if you have our hi-fi book, there is an action called, wait for it, make holds. You would use that in order to make holds. But if you don't have the book and the actions, Brian will show you how to set that up real quick.
Yeah, and if you don't catch everything I say, we're giving you like a whole like instruction sheet, so you don't have to like take notes or anything.
Yeah. Jesse, hold that thought, and we will come back to it after we do color holds.
Okay, so here we have a file, all the rendering's done, and we want to make color holds. So what we can do is we can go to our line art channel, and if we click on the line art channel, at the bottom of the channels palette is a little button, and it just looks like a circle made out of dotted lines. And what that button does is it will make a selection from whatever's in the channel.
We talked about it last time.
So we'll click the button, and it makes a selection. Now, the way that Photoshop, at least by default, works is everything that's white is the selection. So what we really have right now is we have like an inverted selection. So what we're going to need to do is go to select in inverse, and that will just basically like flip what's selected so that we'll be back.
So we get the black.
So we get the black. We're going to make a new layer. I'll name that layer holds. And then the most important, well, one of the most important things is to hit the D key on your keyboard. Who knows what that does? What that D stands for default. And what it does is it sets your color swatches back to black and white. And this way you get the Photoshop black,
which is what you have to have
to fill your holds, right? Not some black that you made,
that you pick,
not some color that you picked from the color picker that kind of look like black, but Photoshop black. Because the same way we talked about how the background layer is special, Photoshop knows Photoshop Black, and it allows it to do special things.
So D key is how you
Yeah,
get that
so-
anytime ever. You get black and white.
And then we'll just fill the selection using the fill command, right? And then we can deselect. We could do that by tapping anywhere, but we can also just go to select, deselect,
Or D, Command D.
right? And we're going to do our preserve transparency trick. And now we're ready for color holds,
So what you've done is made a copy of your line art in a special way.
right? With no white pixels, which is
The
super
special
important.
part.
Yeah, which is super important. Because otherwise it won't work.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, before he goes and does anything, the reason we picked this particular piece of art is that it's cool, but no, is that it has a lot of things going on. So first of all, you have the action lines in the very bottom two panels, right? You see those action lines in comics a lot. If you leave them like that, it's okay, but we can make them kind of fit the scene better. This one also has the smoke. Hold on, go back. He's jumping ahead. He wants to do it. He doesn't want to just sit there. If you look at the smoke, right? We talked about smoke in the Battle Pug scene. If you color hold that and you turn those lines to something else, it makes it look more like actual smoke. The other good thing about this one is the propellers. It can show motion. In the bottom scene, in the bottom two, you have the propeller motion. And then the last thing is atmospheric perspective on this one. So we can actually push that background back so that it looks like they're actually flying. And it, this is again what the Battle Pug one, this would help you on that. Another thing that people do is like behind glasses, like Booster Gold or somebody else, you could put like a yellow glass in there and then color hold their eyes. So there's lots of different things you can do this. So how do you do it, Brian?
Well, like Christy said, it's just like flatting. So all we need is our lasso tool. And I'm just going to make a selection around the elements of black lines that I want to turn to some color. And I'm not going to select the areas that I don't want to turn to a color.
Yeah, and you'll know if you mess up because it looks weird. Color holds are done after the rendering is finished or bounce back and forth. Nope, at the very end.
Yeah.
Color hold, the things we're showing to you today are the last two steps.
Yeah, pretty much everything we're showing you is sequential. So, oh, hey, Brian made a mistake, guys.
Hey, Brian screwed something
So
up.
our previous class, I was showing you how to do feathered rendering.
Oh yeah, he didn't fix his tools.
So my lasso still had like a 12 pixel feather on it.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that was going to make that look really bad.
But
Let's try it again.
all right, so
This is what happens when we have like 2 and 3 streams in a day. I get confused.
that's just if we have streams today.
Hey, hey.
The other thing is that you have to be careful on the lines of the border and stuff. You do not want to get the panel borders.
That could upset some editors.
Well, and it's very obvious when you miss it. So
This is true.
what he's doing is he is picking, in this case, a green that represents that background. And again, you can use your eyedropper and select that green and then go and pick another one. And typically you want to go a little darker, but sometimes you actually want to go a little lighter, right? Depending on what you're trying to do. But if you look at that, he's just going like crazy now. Can't even
Oh,
stop it.
sorry.
But if you look at the one he just did, instantly, turn off the layer, please, for a second. So, no, not that layer. Go back in your history.
Oh.
There you go. So this, it's you get it that there's an airplane that's flying, but if you look at it with the color holds on, you get that, oh, he's way above the Earth, right? He's actually flying. There's your atmospheric perspective. So on Battle Pug, right, you could go in and push back those last row of mountains and all that kind of stuff. He's getting fancy here with his lasso selection. You don't have to do it all crazy like this, but you could. And so, again, with smoke, you missed a piece. Oh, you got it. With smoke, what color do you want to turn it? See, that's a question. Now, Brian always goes for like a golden hue.
I want it to pop off the blue sky.
Ah, see, there you go. But if it wasn't on a blue sky, would you go a different hue?
I don't know. Depends on how it was rendered. If they rendered it like a blue-gray smoke, then it could be color held blue-gray smoke.
Okay, I get it. So now, the other one is, let's just say that this propeller, oh, whoa, he skipped ahead, never mind. Hold
I
on.
can do whatever you want me to do.
Can
I was
you
just
use a
finishing the
grade-
smoke.
Can you use a gradient on a hole? Yes, you can.
So, two answers to that question. The way we're showing you today, no, you can't.
Oh, well.
If you have our book and you have our actions, then yes, you can, because our action is really smart and it can see the difference between a gradient and a solid color.
Right. Oh, so the other thing I was talking about is the propellers. So the thing about the propellers is that you want to show motion, but you have to be very careful in this scenario because you got to get just what you want to be moving, right? So you have to be very careful going around all this other stuff because, like, make a mistake on this somewhere obvious, Brian,
Okay.
and like get something you don't want.
Okay.
And then when you get your little selection done here, any second.
Yeah, see, now you want me to be
Now
fast.
I want you to go faster.
And I'm on the complicated part where I have to focus.
So now if he does this color hold and he does it like this blue to show the motion of the propeller, and you got that big bit, now zoom out a little bit. All of a sudden you're like, oh, what is that? That looks weird. And then the whole color hold doesn't work anymore, right? So you have to be very careful because even if you get a tiny piece that doesn't work, it really doesn't work. Lauren says, how does this work in programs without channels? That's a good question.
So like everything in Photoshop, there's like, I could probably come up with 10 different ways to make color holds. As long as you have an application that allows for transparency, you can do it. A cheat though is we're going to show you special effects here next, or as one of our next things.
Yeah.
You can use a screen layer or a special effects layer to create like a simulated color hold if you're in some sort of software that either doesn't have channels or doesn't support like transparency on the line art. So there's like everything, there's
there's a way around.
There's a way around it, yeah.
But when we get to special effects, help me remember, and we'll do that again.
And like most of the things in this class, the ways that we're showing you aren't the only ways, but they're ways that have a couple of benefits, which is that it lets almost everything remain editable. So you can always go back and make changes. That's really important to us because we work for a lot of publishers. And
there are always changes.
Yeah, there's, or they change their mind, even if you did it right, it can still be wrong, So
and the best one is once they see it in color, then it's wrong. Oh, that's not what I had in my head. Well, then why didn't you tell us that?
But regardless, I mean, the point is that we want to make sure that everything that we do can be changed. So that's one of the reasons we've developed a lot of our techniques. The other reasons are smaller file size and also the ability for like lots of different people to do it. So
at the same time.
You may find a way that you like better that works for you, and that's definitely okay. Or that you may be on some software where you need to do it a different way.
Let me also say, are you noticing that he is being careful of the lines, right? As flats, it's the same thing, but kind of the opposite, right? So it doesn't matter where he goes out into the green or the purple or the blue or the red or the whatever. It only matters if he goes around those lines. So now again, in this one, you can give dude here this background, his little action lines, super easy, super fast, go all the way around him and around the edges of the box. And then, boom. So all of a sudden, this makes a whole lot more sense and it's a lot more interesting. It fits in its environment. And the other two center panels there, he would also do the mountains, right? So then it pushes the mountains back as well as the land. And now he might do the mountains a different color than he would do the land because they are a different color. You see what I'm saying here? So these are some more of those little decisions you have to make as you go along. But see, he doesn't really care where his lasso is, except for that little piece you missed right there. Whatever.
This little piece?
Yeah, that little piece right there. Okay, good. So now he can pick. Oh, well, he's got to finish his selection, but then he can pick. So if you were going to do this, let's say you didn't know what color you wanted, use your eyedropper.
Mm-hmm.
So he could get his eyedropper and he could go and pick the color of those mountains. And then where's he going to go? So the eyedropper shows you the color originally, right? And then it shows you your color choice so you can see how different it is.
And if you're not comfortable navigating in the hue box and you just want to make it darker, you can always just go to the brightness picker and just slide the brightness slider down too. So like I said, Photoshop gives you all sorts of options. So whatever's easiest for you.
But then, you know, let's say, oh, I hate that. Okay, well, just go pick a different color, right?
Right. Like maybe a bright blue. Oh no,
No,
we
please
would
don't
never,
pick a
we would
bright
never
blue.
do that.
Nah, that's not a good one. So anyway, this is not hard. It can be time consuming.
And all artists love it when you color hold their art, right, Christy?
Yeah, that was my next point. Some artists absolutely hate this. They hate color holds. They don't want you changing their art at all. And so they will not want you to do this. Other people don't care. Other people think it makes it look correct, you know, right in its environment. So it just depends on who the artist
And
is.
some clients actually have like, they want all the backgrounds color held or something.
Right.
Like
If
that,
you go and watch cartoons, there are certain styles that are set. Like on SpongeBob, if you go back and look at the finished SpongeBob that we gave you as a reference in your flats, the specific weird stuff, like I almost cussed, specific weird stuff like his
well, his
socks,
sponge,
his sponge,
yeah,
but
his
the like
socks.
stripes between his socks are color held.
Yeah.
Why?
And
But
almost all the backgrounds on that book.
almost all of the backgrounds are, but his body parts aren't, just the sponge and the socks. It's very strange. But like if you go and watch The Simpsons, they are all, even though they're yellow, they're outlined in black, but all their backgrounds are color held. So you just can start paying attention to who does what. It's a stylistic choice as well sometimes. Alrighty. So questions on color holds.
Do we want to talk about how to finish them then?
Yeah, just a second.
Okay.
Questions?
Sorry.
Again, if you got the flat and you got this, it's just that you're doing the lines instead of the spaces.
Yep.
All right, so now, if you have our book, you have to, when you get it all done the way you like it, do the one that says finish holds.
And if it was me, I'd save before I finish the
yes.
holds. That way you have a version you can always go back to.
Right, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Because finish holds finishes the holds. And what we mean by that is makes it ready for separations. So if you're going to print, that matters a lot. Now, if you don't have the book, Brian.
Okay, so here we go. So if you don't have the book, we're just going to take the magic wand on our holds layer. We're just going to click on any of the black inks. And again, Photoshop Black special. And then we're just going to hit the delete key, which I think is backspace on PC, to get rid of the black from the holds layer. Now we get to go to our channel. And if you don't, you have to remember all this. We're giving you instructions. But
I uploaded it in the material.
Go to the line art channel. We're going to do the invert. No, we're not going to invert the selection. We're just going to fill it with white. No, we are going to invert the selection. I can't remember. It's my second class today. I don't know what's going on. All right, so select inverse, and then we're going to fill that with white. I said white. There we go.
Still white.
I know.
Okay.
There we go. And so all that does is it just clears the color holds out of the line art channel. So what we're left with is the line art with no color holds.
So you can see the places where he did it, right?
So, and if we go to our rendering on our holds layer, we have color holds but no line art. So it's just tearing them apart is all we're really doing. I know we had the question about using a gradient. If you're using our actions, you can use a gradient in your color holds and it will pixel by pixel pull it all apart for you. Obviously the magic wand isn't quite as good as that. So I would just go solid colors if you're going to use the do it by hand technique.
And you should definitely try the rainbow gradient on your color holds because that is super fun. Let me just say.
So yeah, so now they're pulled apart. So the line art is still just the line art, and the color holds their own thing now.
And that matters when you go to separate it for print. That's why that matters. If you again are doing this for just web versions or whatever, it's not quite as important. But if you actually want this to print correctly, then that really very much matters.
Yeah.
All right. Nothing else on that particular one?
Okay.
All right, let's move on to special effects.
Oh, I was going to show like in the actual printed comic.
Oh yeah, what did it look like?
This is what it looked like, and it has a ton of color holds on it. Like they wanted a bunch of holds.
Yeah,
so.
and if you look at the propellers, look how good that turned out. It makes it look a lot more like it's moving, right?
Yeah. So that's
and
how
the perspective of the atmospheric perspective, you know. So again, it very much is appropriate in this setting. Sometimes though people get a little crazy,
That's
and
right.
that's why some artists don't like it.
Yeah, you may have a comic where you use it once every 3 pages, or you may have something like this where it's like on every panel. So you never know.
Cool.
Okay, what's next?
Next is special effects.
Special effects. Okay.
So I gave you a file, which we will play with in a minute, but this one I did not give to you, but you can just watch for a second and then we'll go and play with the file that we gave you.
Yeah, this is definitely the watch and enjoy and get excited for special effects. Okay.
We have a special effects folder.
Do you want to show some of those first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can do that.
You want me to do it or are you gonna do it?
I can do it. No problem. No problem. I didn't know if we were gonna do that today or not. Okay. Special effects. Open Sesame. Do it. I'm thinking that I should have restarted my computer between class sessions.
And we use different platforms, so that really confused me.
All right. Well, this particular JPEG decided to open up separately from the rest of them, but I guess we could talk about it first, maybe.
So obviously on this, and we were talking about the brake lights, and Jesse mentioned headlights. So these are special effects. That's how you can get these glows and different things to work, right? So obviously here on Superman, it's a Green Lantern effect.
More importantly,
should we tell a story about this stupid
I think
comic?
You should tell a story about this comic.
So you will notice that Superman, Man of Steel, impenetrable, has to have a Green Lantern helmet on his head.
And I can tell you it wasn't drawn there.
It was not drawn there. Brian had to go in and invent how to put this darn helmet on this dude's head.
The entire comic was done and ready to go to print.
But if you notice, the dog, how come he can breathe?
Well, he has to catch the Frisbee, so a helmet wouldn't make sense for him.
That was the explanation. So Brian had to figure out how to draw a helmet on Superman and a Green Lantern effect on every single one. But then we're like, well, what about the dog? And they're like, we can't figure that out, so just forget it. He's special. And I'm like, but he's going to suffocate.
Yeah, I guess in this storyline, Superman had lost some, but not all of his powers. And one of those powers was he couldn't breathe in space anymore. So, yeah.
Anyway, it was really frustrating.
There's only 22 pages of this.
Right. Minimum of 6 panels per page. Yes. And he's in every one of them. So anyway, the point is, that's not the point. The point is that making the Green Lantern effects and making him glow, obviously a special effect. And we'll show you how to do the glowing. But the green part, making soups green like that, is a color hold, right? All right. Go away, Superman.
Bye, Superman.
All right, so here, let's start thinking about where the color hold, where the special effects happen. So it's subtle here because you think it's mostly done in the rendering, but really...
So anywhere that this light that's coming through some off-panel window, anywhere it overlaps the line art and the color, that's the special effect. And that's when you're making special effects, that's how you have to think about it. Like, is it under the line art or is it over the line art, right? If it only affects the color, it's not a special effect. You can just do it as part of the rendering. But if it has to affect both things, then it's a special effect.
This is one of those panels too, by the way, that none of that shadow above, what's his name? What's that dude's name? Not
Toymaker?
Yeah, Toymaker. That shadow was not in the script. That's not anywhere. Brian did that as a color choice, right? To make it more interesting than just this weird gray wall around everything. So that's another thing. Just keep that in mind. Okay, go on. Let's go through these pretty quick.
Okay. So laser beams, that's a special effect. And in the last panel, you can see color holds on his glasses. So that's kind of cool. Lots more laser beams and glows and batarang tings and all kinds of stuff.
Next. So this one, Dan Jurgens is like, we need a fade out effect. I'm going to draw a square panel or rectangular panel, and I need you to make it look like they're falling through space. And Brian's like, uh-huh.
And Dan and I have gone on to do this effect on a bunch of comics now. But yeah, so he would just draw like the buildings and stuff out and then just want it all to fade to white. So doing special effects made that a lot easier.
That's a rainbow gradient too, by the way.
Yeah, bottom panel, rainbow gradient effect. Oh, yeah. So I think it was Jeff Johns actually, like years ago for Booster when they did the reboot. He's like, I want the time stream effect to be a rainbow. And I was like, oh my God, that's gonna be a nightmare. Yeah. And so even now in the DC universe, just pretty much every time there's a time stream effect, it's rainbow colors, which can be hard to pull off. So lots of color holds and haze and effects and glows and stuff on
And you
this
look at this, the
one.
whole background pretty much is color held on this one.
Yeah. Well, lots of shines on his silver metal.
That's another thing we were talking about rendering metal on when we did that day. Part of the way you sell it that it's metal is to put a little ting or a little glow on it so that it makes it more shiny.
Yeah. Lots more rainbow gradient effects here for Booster Gold and the Time Sphere.
He lost his pants.
Indeed.
Screens,
Yeah,
phone screens, computer screens, TV screens. That's another area to use color holds and glow because obviously your TV glows.
Yeah.
Booster's shiny bits.
Yeah, Booster's goggles. We've got glows and color holds there.
Right.
This was kind of a fun one. We actually did color hold the entire thing, like sepia, all the black line sepia. And then instead of using like glows on the special effects layer, of which there are a few, just brought in a texture on the special effect layer to give it this like old timey weathered paper kind of look.
Turns out this is a Luke and Leia scenario too. They find out they're brothers. Oops.
Some sort of like light sparkles or light flares, something we can do.
And again, a glowing sign.
Yeah, glowing sign. These flashlight effects, you know, when the artist just draws a circle, you're just like, what am I gonna do with that? You know, you're like, I have to do something. More
shiny butt.
Shine sparkles there. Lots of little.
That's your sister. Step back.
Lots of little tiny sparkles to show that it's metal. Lots of color holds here for the Time Sphere. Different colored glows on the different lights. Our rainbow gradient effect down there towards the bottom.
Groovy. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a great piece of art. This is Nicola.
Yeah.
I love this piece of art.
So we've got like a couple of things going here. We've got color holds in the background, plus some haze, like a haze gradient on the effects layer in the background to help pop the characters forward off the background even more. And then like a few shines on the armor and stuff like that.
Nicola makes the greatest poses. I don't know how that's possible. This is also Nicola.
Again,
Look at her legs.
More shines on the armor, more glows from the weapons.
Just for my brain, flats go in the background layer, then a layer of renders, separate layer for color holds, separate effects layer. Yes, yes.
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 And it all kind of builds, right? Like it's all sequential. Like you can't start with effects. Like it would be a disaster. Like we've seen people who would try to hide like crappy rendering under effects, and
it's obvious.
It's so obvious. Yeah, like good effects do not hide bad rendering. So
sometimes it depends on who it is, but sometimes people have their flats above their background layer just for whatever reason.
I don't recommend it.
We don't recommend it, but you will see that occasionally. And sometimes people don't have a render layer. They just have their background and that's it.
Yeah.
So it just depends on.
In the old timey days when the computers were slower,
old-timey,
we had to not have a flat layer and a render layer. We could only use the flats channel. I know someone had asked a question about hard disk space. Or,
yeah, that was Jesse too. Scratch disk.
Yeah, so what we do is first of all, we try to do everything we can to keep the files as compact as possible. But the other thing we do is we offload the storage of all of our files onto like external hard drive or external like network connected drive. One of those reasons because Christy and I both have to access them, but also they're not living on the machine that I'm rendering on, so they're not using up any of that hard drive space. So it can make a difference for sure. So anyway, lots of glows, lots of screens.
Clip by cat.
Lots of cool effects. I mean, this one's like full of effects, so it was fun. Here you go, lots of sparkles on the broken glass. Whenever you see broken glass, you know.
Got a bunch of tings.
That's right. You gotta do it upright, make it look cool.
I think my mother flatted this one, and she was quite pissed that there were so many pieces of glass.
Yes, flatters hate broken glass almost as much as rendering people do. Oh, and here's lightsabers.
There you go, lightsabers.
Somebody asked about lightsabers. Now, I'll tell you, officially, I don't know how it is now that Disney owns them, but pre-Disney, Lucasfilm always had us do the actual blade as just white, just pure white, and the only color was the glow around it. Now, I've seen other things different than that now, so it could be a little bit officially different, but that's how it always was.
Yes, this is Joe Caroni's art, this particular piece.
Yeah, Joe Crony did the
But
artwork.
Also keep in mind too that, just FYI, none of that background's drawn in at all. Nothing. It's just
That's not
Boba.
true. He drew the circle for the planet.
Okay, there was a circle. But that's the only thing that's drawn in.
That's right. Photoshop. We love it.
Yeah, white blade and a color halo. Yes, Jesse, that's right.
And so here you go. We've got tons of color holds and effects on this massive double cover. So this was for what? Checkmate versus not Batman the Outsiders. Well, yeah, I know. I was trying to think of the name of the title.
It's
It was
Teen Titans Checkmate or something.
No, I think it was Outsiders. I think it was Checkmate.
Oh, it was Outsiders. Who cares?
I don't have to remember. I care.
It was
Anyway.
a while ago.
We got fire glowing. We got effects glowing. We got all kinds of stuff glowing there. Oh, and there's our other
Dog.
Superman page. There we go.
Ugh,
We can see.
poor dog. It's gonna implode.
Oh, here's another Crony one. There you go. We got engine glows. We got glow around R2. We got R2's little light. Little motion blurs off the TIE fighters. Those are effects. So,
Mhm.
all right. That's it. That's our examples.
All right, so now, how do we do these?
Now, can I make some effects?
And you can finally make the effects now.
Okay. So, Christy, tell us about actions or scripts.
I was like, but it's a script. So again, if you have the book, there's these great things that will help you along. Step 1 is how you set your file up for flatting, and you step 1, and then you do step 2. Step 2 does a magic thing where it makes a special effects layer for you. That's what the step 2 is. Now, if you don't have that, you can still obviously do special effects. You just have to make your own layer.
Yep. So we'll do that right now. So the first part is exactly what we did for holds, which is we're going to go to the channel. We're going to click the make selection button, inverse the selection. And this time, instead of making a holds layer, now if we had done holds on this, there would be a holds layer already, but this art doesn't have holds, so that's fine. I'm going to name this one line art so that I know. I'm going to hit the D key on my keyboard and I'm going to fill it with black. And then once I have that done, I'm ready to make my special effects layer. So I can make a new layer. If you didn't hit the D key before, you better hit it now. We're going to fill that entire layer with black.
And here's the magic part.
We're going to name this layer special
That's not
effects.
magic.
That's not magic. But we're going to set the layer mode from normal to screen. And screen mode is painting with light. The opposite of all light is Photoshop black, which means that it's transparent. So screen mode layer, you fill it with black, the black becomes transparent, and that's the foundation of making all these special effects work.
So if you don't set that layer to screen mode, none of this works.
That's right. And if you fill it with some other color than Photoshop black,
It also doesn't work.
ain't nothing gonna work after that.
Right.
It's gonna be a big hot mess. So it's all set up, it's all ready to go.
All right, so let's talk.
Let's do
So
it.
first of all, this is an awesome piece of Howard Porter art. So if you look at it, it's a cool piece of art. He's already drawn in some cool stuff. So now, knowing what you know about special effects, type in the chat or pop yourself on or whatever, and where do you think you could use some of these special effects that you have just learned about? They're typing, Brian, just wait.
For environment or
The
mood.
lightning, yes, exactly. The haze, the bat logo, the mech chest, yep, all of those things. So
You have to buy those mech chests right when McDonald's releases them because there's a small window before they take them back. You got to get them fast.
glowing eyes, lightning, yep, somebody else said eyes, affects the lightning, right. So all of these things, exactly. Now the only other thing that we would maybe say that you didn't add in is that the lights that are in the background of those like little apartment buildings or whatever those things are, you might pull those in too. Button lights, yeah, those little tiny things. And the rain, right. What happens when you have lightning? You have rain. So
It's true.
there's several different things that you can do here. So let's start, which one do you want to start with?
I'm going to start with a little bit of haze between Batman and the Batbot.
Now, you need to, when you do this, you would have to go and, oh, heat lightning. Yeah, that's true here in Arizona. But you have to go and make a selection. That means you have to take your little lasso and you have to lasso around the area that you want to cut out of your selection. And you can save that in a channel or whatever. Did you save this one in a channel or are you just doing this right now?
I made like a quick little cheater layer so they don't have to watch me use the lasso for like 5 minutes.
Right. But you would have to lasso around.
Yes, for sure. Make your selection. So in this instance, I just want to put a little bit of distance, a little bit of atmosphere between Batman and the bot behind him. So I just sampled the sky color, made my selection, grabbed the gradient, and I can just bring maybe 1 or 2 swoops of that color in there. And that second one maybe is a little harsh.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
Maybe.
We'd hate for it to be overdone.
There we go. Yeah, we don't want to overdo the effects.
That never happens.
And so, we can toggle that off and on, and you can see that just pushes Batman forward and just creates a little bit of space between the two of them there. So next, I guess we could take our brush and we could address some of those like glows and lights and stuff we were
Now,
talking
because
about.
we're on the special effects layer, all we got to do.
Right. So the special effects layer is set to screen mode. Our brush and our gradient are set to screen mode. So we're still painting with light. It's just that the special effects layer passes the light down to all the layers beneath it. But again, it's non-destructive, so we're not permanently changing anything, which is really nice. Okay, so
we get yelled at later.
Yeah, you don't want to have to redo that. All right, Batbot, he's got some little glowing lights in a couple of different places. We can address those.
And he's literally taking a brush and just going over them in a circle.
Yeah, just making little. I know you guys can't. All I ever really do is make little swirls. Like whenever I'm doing like some of the rendering, like we're showing like the forehead and the faces or these little things, I'm just swirling the brush so that I can control the pressure and get a nice stroke. Because if you like dab or like dot the brush, it'll make like, it's harder to control. You make like big blobby mess. Do this bat logo on his chest.
Nice.
Something like
He's
that.
very glowy now.
Let's see. Oh, we wanted to take care of these windows in the background.
So yeah, choose a different color now.
Yeah, they're like this hot pink kind of color. So
change the size of your brush.
Yeah, I'm using the bracket keys constantly to make the brush bigger or smaller as I'm working on these areas.
All right, there's some glowy bits. Shall we do what, lightning next? Or do you want to make it rain first?
No, let's do the lightning. So now the lightning is interesting here because the artist did draw some lightning into the art.
God bless Howard.
And so I did, I said we can use channels for storage. So I did save that he had drawn. I'd made a selection and saved that into a channel so I could get to it right now at this moment. So again, I can use the little button to make a selection from the channel. Oops, and I can actually click
you can turn everything creepy
on
red.
The RGB and not just on the R. And so what I might want to do is just maybe fill that with white to get my hot white lightning, but it looks pretty 2D, right? It looks pretty flat. And we want that to glow. So another thing we can do is just to go ahead and modify that selection a little bit. So we can go to the menu bar to select, modify, and we can try to expand that selection out a little bit. So let's go like somewhere between like 12 and 20 pixels. So I'm going to try like 18. And then we can feather that selection. So again, select, modify, feather, and set to 12. That might be okay. We can see what that looks like. She's going to soften that selection. So now I can take my paintbrush and I can choose this like sky color again, and I can paint right into that selection now, and it's going to make that lightning glow. And every time I put a stroke down, it's just going to get a little bit brighter. So I can make that lightning really glow inside that feathered selection. And if we hide the marching ants, I think we can see, yeah, I think that'll work out pretty good. Now, here's a mistake. I painted into this wire. I've never done that before. How do I fix it? So what you could do is you could freehand it. I think in this instance, this is small enough. I'm just going to take my lasso to clean this up a little bit. And when you want to fix something on a special effects layer, it's very important. You want to go ahead and hit the D key again, and then fill that selection with the default black. You don't want to just delete on that layer because you'll make a hole in the layer, and then that'll affect the printing, right? So you want to fill anything with, anytime you want to like erase in air quotes on your special effects layer, you want to use the default black because that's going to make it back to transparent on a screen layer.
Show them just what the effects layer looks like just right now so they can get an idea.
So that's everything that's on the special effects layer right now.
Right, so you get an idea of how that looks. And so that line that he painted in where he went over that chord or whatever it was, he can just fill it with black again, so then it's like it's not even like he didn't do it originally.
Yeah.
Jesse says, does that sheet put a sheen over the white, or did that white stay pure white?
Well, you can't be more white than white, so it didn't affect the white at all.
Yeah.
One way you can always check that is with your eyedropper tool. You probably can't see the tiny numbers in the top right corner of my screen, but it says 0000, which is white. Or if you went into the color picker, you could verify that. But screen mode is painting with light, so if you're already at white, no matter how much screen mode you put over top of that, it won't ever get more than white.
Right. Glenda says, I think since the screen layer setting only lets you lighten stuff, it wouldn't affect white because the only thing you can do is lighten, right? Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so now
that lightning is going to create like little reflections and stuff on everybody. And so again, you want to watch me make a gazillion selections. So I've saved that in a channel, but we can load that up here. And I think I'll just use the gradient and just bring some of those like little rim lights and stuff onto here from that lightning. And that'll look pretty cool. And yes, in real life, it took to make all these selections. So, but it's worth it because they look so darn cool.
In real life.
Yeah.
All right.
Outside the classroom in real life.
So now, can we make it rain yet?
Do we think there should be some rain?
Yes, make it rain.
Okay, we can do some rain. So I'm going to pick the sky color and maybe just go a little bit lighter and go to my brushes.
And guess what we have? A handy dandy rain brush.
Do I have rain brushes? I probably have. Oh, there we go. Rain 1 and Rain 2. There we go. Which one's which? I think Rain 2 is our favorite one now. Yeah, that looks right.
So now if you look at it, if you put that brush over the black, you can see that it looks like it's just one line, right? See how it looks like it's just one line. But because of the way he set up the brush,
remember we talked about
jitter and scatter,
all that stuff, right? So there's 1 stroke, 2 strokes, and I can make it a little smaller if I want to. 3 strokes, 4 strokes.
That's
Boom,
it.
rain.
Pouring down rain in 4 strokes. But if anybody asks, that took forever.
Oh yeah.
Now Brian has this thing that he always likes to add splatter, that the rain splatters. And this is one of those brushes he calls like rain, sand, snow, or whatever. It does like 47 things. But
that's right. All purpose.
this is like the Rihanna video for Umbrella. You know, when it's raining, you gotta have the splashes on everything. Brian cannot have rain unless he has these splashes.
Yeah, it makes it more believable.
That just made my pencil so much easier. Yeah, and actually, Howard used to draw in rain and snow, and he would put them on a layer for us, which was nice. But we're like, you don't have to do that at all. He's like, oh,
So many artists
snap.
don't put them on a layer, but we're just like, if it's rain or snow, please don't draw it in.
Yeah, please, please, please don't draw it because somebody has to color hold all that crap
Right. Or try to make it look.
or flat it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, what else can we do? Let's do something fun. Let's do something that's out of the ordinary.
Okay. You want to do like a sparkle or something?
Okay, so wait. You've seen the remember those old Orbitz commercials where she would chew the gum and she'd be like, hold the gum and it'd be like, ting, and it'd come off her teeth? Let's do that. Off Batman's teeth.
All right, we can do that. So I'm going to make this as a new screen mode layer, just so I have the ability to, if I'm not happy with it, I can move it around or something.
Maybe you're not going to be happy with this. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, if you say so. So we go back to my normal brush. And what color do we want to make this ting? Just like silver blue or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there is, as you all know, probably in the effects for Photoshop, you can make a lens flare. Now,
Please don't
please don't use that.
Please don't.
It is very obvious when you use that. Every colorist in the world knows that you've used the Photoshop lens flare. Also,
And every art director and creative director.
right, and editor. And we have discovered recently that some people don't actually know what a lens flare really is, right? Lens flares were accidents. When you actually had a camera and you pointed it the wrong direction and it caught the sun, it would make these flares because it was
Bouncing around the optics and stuff inside the
aperture was
camera.
set
Yeah.
wrong, and it bounced around and caused this little accident, which was a boo-boo, but we decided they look super cool. So now we purposefully add them all over the place.
Well, JJ decided they look super cool.
Well, that's true. God bless JJ. All right, so you can make your own super easily.
So I'm just going to start by making a little spot right on his shiny white tooth there where Christy wants his tooth to sparkle. And I think for this one, I'm going to use the lasso and just draw kind of like a pointy X kind of shape. So like really skinny. And it could be a fat sparkle too, but I'm going skinny today. And I'm gonna take my brush, I'm gonna make it really big, and I'll just swirl around a couple of strokes there with the brush, make it a little bit smaller, swirl around again, a little smaller, and that way it'll just get more and more intense. You could use a radial gradient too, if you wanted to, whichever. And then I think for the final touch, I'll make the brush really small and just kind of go in there and like obliterate that center out so that you can't really see.
Now remember, this is on an effects layer, so it's not really messing up the art or anything.
Nope, it's not really there.
But look how awesome that is. Now he's got a ting on his tooth. Are you implying you don't like it?
Well, what would the editor say?
They say they don't like it.
Okay, so maybe we could sell it better if we put it in the Batbot's eye.
Whatever, not nearly as cool. He's free transforming, by the way. You gotta love free transform.
And if I like that one, I could go ahead and Larrabee copy it, move it over here. And then
if you think that looks better.
If I was happy with both of them, I could just go ahead and merge it down into the special effects layer.
Whatever. It's all right.
Right. Now, and then again, the nice thing is, right, we didn't affect our color, our line art, our rendering at all. They're all still separate, which is really nice.
Okay, now, that's all kinds of fun stuff. So before we move off of this piece, let's talk about Kalinda asked a question, and people have asked it many times in the past. And that is, this happens every day, all day long. So let's say that we get this all perfect and it looks awesome and we are completely happy with it. We turn it in, the editor comes back and says, oh, our bad. This is not that Batman. This is Bizarro Batman. And Bizarro Batman should actually not be red. He should be...
I'm not going to pick a color.
Pink.
All right.
He should be pink.
And for the record, the only time Photoshop is ever locked up
is when we do this.
Is when we use hue saturation on video chat. So
if it locks up, we'll go from there.
Right.
Yeah. We'll see.
Right. So here's how we make changes.
And Kalinda, this is what you were asking.
Yeah. And again, so all the rendering is on this one layer. And, if you get in there and try to use your magic wand, you're going to get little bits and pieces. Or if you try to, make the adjustments, it's going to be really hard to reselect areas to change. And that's why we always talk about the importance of your flats. So we keep the flats down here below the rendering. Or if you had a computer with less memory, you might have to go over to the flats channel, right, to get them there. But either way, sorry, I know it's this delay here. Either way, we can take the magic wand and actually click on the flats, right? So I'm on the flats channel, click on the flats. I'm going to get the red of his costume and the red of the cape. And then I can go back to the render layer and now I can make adjustments to that. So if it's a simple color adjustment, I could just use like hue saturation.
Just Command U.
Right, Command U. And you can either just adjust the hue slider or you can use the colorize button. I think for this one, I'll use colorize. That gives me a little bit more ways to fine tune it. And Christy said like a pink kind of color, I think.
He's breast cancer awareness Batman.
There we go. So it's maybe not perfect, but there you go. So it will change the main color. Now, if we had secondary lighting and stuff, you might have to go in and do a little bit of fine tuning, but this is much, much faster and easier than like starting over from scratch on some part of your art, right?
You don't have to.
And you don't have to keep just this part floating on its layer for days and days while you're working on your art, because with your flats, you can just always go back and get just that one part you want to change.
And it works for anything. You could do a tree this way. You could do a costume. You can do anything this way. You have your flats. That's why you have your flats. And you just choose out of your flats what you want to change, and you use the hue saturation. And you can
or adjustment too.
Or any other. Yeah, right. True. You could do anything you wanted to it, but change it. And so when the editors ask, that takes hours of our time. Corrections take days. But really, that's what we do. So, and agree. And now, again, the worst part is when they come in and say, as you just learned, they come in and say, oh, that scene that you rendered in daytime, that's really nighttime. Now, that does actually take time to fix all that. But if it's just something like we changed his costume on you, or his gloves are the wrong color or whatever.
Right. Which is the most common type of correction a colorist would get, was that they want a color changed or something like that.
All right, so now we gave you, this is, by the way, the funniest part about this, if you didn't read this, this is a JLK 3000. And if you didn't read this, there's a little tiny girl driving this robot. A little girl inside that big bot, that bat bot, and there's a little tiny girl driving him around, so it's kind of funny. But, so we gave you this one. And so, again, there is lots of things that you could do with, and that car should look familiar now. And so you can add headlights to that car, you could add a screen glow to that billboard in the background, you know how to increase that rain, or you could color hold. Now you see why we don't want you drawing the damn rain. Now you have to color hold all that rain. And you have to not get it on top, get anything you're not supposed to. Sometimes when it's this much rain, we just kind of ignore it and don't color hold it anymore because it just takes forever. So there's a ton of things you can
Kalinda
do.
had asked about another way to do color holds. So just quickly, if
It was Lauren actually.
oh sorry, someone had asked about another way to do color holds. If you don't have channels or whatever, you can make a selection either from your line art or by hand, and on your special effects layer, if you carefully select around the area you would want to be like a simulated color hold, any color you would add to that special effects layer would change the appearance of the black line beneath it, right? So by doing that, you could create like a simulated color hold. Now, the black is still there beneath it, so it's not the recommended way to do it because
especially if you're going to print.
It won't print as cleanly. But if your software doesn't support channels, or you don't have a way to do what we showed, this is a good alternative way to do it.
Let's show them headlights real quick, and then we need to move on.
Okay. Headlights. Let's just start with like a basic glow on the special effects layer. So we could do like just a basic little glow to start. And in the artwork, there's even drawn some like beam lines over here. So we could follow those out. I might want those to be feathered though. So let's do like 24 pixel feather. And we can follow these beam lines out and do like a little gradient on there. And maybe just a little bit from the other headlight, just so that they look like they're in the same universe. And
They're
then
both on. One's not burnt out.
I don't think they're using the brakes while driving, but we could still be like,
2-foot driver.
It's a really fast car, so they're traveling so fast that we can still see like some streaks of the red out the back or something like that. Right.
There you go. Instant, easy headlights.
Yeah, and, you can spend time to make those look as broad or as like tightly focused or however you want them to.
So again, you just paint it, literally paint with light on that layer, and that layer does magic stuff. Questions about special effects? Are we clear on how the lightsabers worked now, Jesse? Okay.
Yeah, the same way the lightning worked, right? Is white base, glow around it.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions on special effects? They're fun and they can get a little out of control. So there are some people that don't like them quite so much. So be careful, use them sparingly. But
have fun.
They're wrong. The more the merrier. All right. So let's talk quickly about color separations.
Okay. Let's see what I got here. Load this up. Go Photoshop. Yes, open.
If any of you follow Brian on Twitch, they make him sing all the time. Oy vey. I mean, good job, honey.
Somebody's got to do it.
No, they really don't. Are you opening here?
I'm opening. Depends on how many examples you want me to show and stuff.
Just a few.
All right. I don't know why the one file doesn't open now, but
it's spinning. He's spinning over there. Hold on.
It's the file of death.
It was poor SpongeBob. We hate SpongeBob all of a sudden for some reason.
Okay.
All right.
Dun, dun, dun.
Share screen.
All right. So depends on how much in depth you want to get today, but so when we're going to CMYK color on a professional level, we're taking all sorts of things into account, which is like, how is the line art drawn? So like in this instance, it's what we call bitmap, which means it's only black or white. There's no gray value in there. In some other artwork, it's what's called contone or continuous tone, which means that the line art itself is gray. You can see there's soft edges on these pixels, plus there might be some gray shading in there, and you can see it right there. Those two types of artwork are going to behave completely differently. When we go to CMYK color, here's another continuous tone, Howard Porter. It's got gray and it's got textures and it's got all kinds of stuff going on, right? So if you're going to like professionally go and do print comics, this is where we say, go get our book and use the step 3 action, because it can tell the difference in the art and make really perfect color separations and trapping and all the stuff for you.
And what Brian's not saying is that in the book, Brian wrote this script to do it for you, but it's like 30 steps, right? And he had to figure it all out, and he had to get it into an action for you to use.
Yeah. And what that action can do in like 30 seconds would take you half an hour at least to do on your own.
Per page.
Yeah, per
Right.
page. So it's really powerful, and it's definitely the best choice if you're at like a professional level, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So for the rest of us who are not there, or who are doing this for fun, or who are doing it not for print, what we're going to show you today is just to make sure that your file is safe as can be when you convert it to CMYK color, versus doing our full color separation process. And so the best way to do that is just to make sure that you are compressing your layers down. So doing like a flatten image. From the layers palette menu, you can do the flatten image. Also, when you go to CMYK, it will ask you if you want to flatten the image. If it's your file that you've made and you know it's all going to work out, it's okay to do that. If you're
Sometimes though, if you put your layers in the wrong order,
that's what I can say. If you're unsure, just do the flatten image thing first, and that way you'll know that it's gonna look right.
like if you accidentally put your color holds out of order, then your color holds won't show up if you do if you do it out of order.
Yeah, exactly. So we would just tell Red to flatten the image, and then go ahead and do the image mode CMYK color, and you can see how much we shifted here. And then delete the 2 extra channels, the flash channel and the lantern channel. And then the most important thing is, once you do that, you want to do a save as, right? You don't want to save over top your file that had all the layers, because then you would lose that file. So you want to be really careful to always do a save as. And then when we do that, we normally add the letter CMYK into the file name, so that we know that it is
it's been separated.
that it's not one of the files that we're working on, that it's ready for print. And then we'll save it as a TIFF file, embed the color profile. That's very, 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 very important. And then when I ask you to save as a TIFF, it's always going to ask if you want to do this LZW compression or not. You're going to have like old-timey people tell you to leave that unchecked.
Old-timey.
They don't know what they're talking about, so just click LZW. It's fine.
Trust us.
It's the same compression that's used automatically in the PSD files that you're working on. It's not going to hurt anything. It doesn't lose any detail or anything like that. It just makes your file smaller, a lot smaller. So it's okay. And then click OK. So if you're making a postcard or a business card or something like that, this will work perfectly fine for you. If you're making your own self-published comic, it'll be okay, but you would probably be better off using the system out of our book, that kind of thing.
Okay, a couple of things before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Jesse is asking again, is this where you know if you'll have enough contrast for print? Well, one of the ways is that, and this is also your illegal colors thing. If you go back up to, Brian, click on the open file in your history.
Okay, yeah.
So here's what it looked like originally.
And you can see how much red and saturation is in this orange sky versus what happens to it in CMYK color.
Right? So it takes out at least 25% of what you see.
As far as like contrast,
brightness,
saturation,
right.
Brightness, yeah.
So if you are not sure, you could separate it or do this little trick that Brian just showed you.
And when you can also do the what's it called? CMYK preview thing that we're talking about. Proof colors is what they call
Proof
it.
colors now, which is Y, Command Y.
Which is what I normally do. I open the file if I'm coloring it. I do the Command Y and I start rendering, and that way it shows me an approximation of what it's going to look like in CMYK.
So now, also this is when you have to be careful of stuff like reds that will go kind of muddy brown and that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily just about contrast, but it is about
well, it's ink level, saturation, a lot of it.
Right.
Like, let's look at the sky for a second, and let's turn off the proof colors, and let's make the sky more red. And there we go, more red and more saturated. And you're like looking at your screen, you're like, this is exactly what I want. But the problem is it's going to print like that, right? So your monitor is able to create colors that cannot be reproduced in print. So that's what we have to be really careful of. And what that means is that the amount of ink that can be put on the paper is limited, and the amount of light that the paper can reflect is limited. So you can only do so much.
Also, if you look at, just for example, grab from the flats, grab the dino bird fly guy, pterodactyl thing. Now go and make him a green that is an illegal green.
Okay. Let's just crank up the saturation like that.
Okay, so now, but go to the color picker now so I can see that it's an illegal color.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well, it's not calling it illegal yet because it's probably just going to shift it to like a yellow or something.
Well, choose one that's cray.
All right, let's see what we can get here. There's like an orange that's illegal.
Okay.
And we get the exclamation point there.
Okay, so now put that in there. Choose that one. Now, when you do your preview, see how much different it looks anyway?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, reds and purples are really the two colors that shift the most. So you have to really watch those.
Also, keep in mind that as far as your contrast goes, remember Brian showed you how to make them grayscale early on? And so that will also give you an idea if your rendering is too close together. You can look at it in grayscale and see if it's all one value, then it's not enough. And I guarantee when you're starting out, it's not enough no matter what you think.
Yeah.
See how much difference there is on boosters like 5s, for example, right? There's a lot of contrast there between the main core highlight and the shadows. So you get an idea of how much it takes for it to show up when you print. Again, keep in mind 25% is what's lost.
So I just want to talk briefly, because I know we're almost out of time, about color settings, just so people know.
I agree.
So again, in the book, if you're using the book, we do it all for you. You don't have to think about it. But for everyone else, color settings. So when you convert something to CMYK, or when you use that CMYK preview, it's using this value right here, whatever is in your CMYK setup, right? So the problem, or how do I put this? Not the problem. The good thing about that is if you know everything there is to know about CMYK color, you can get in here and make the perfect setup and get your exact results you want almost every time. But the bad news is if you don't know what you're doing, right? Or if you have bad information, you can create something that you think looks good and then get really unexpected results. So that's why when you have people who say, I don't know why my red's printed bad, or I don't know why my purples turn blue, or whatever it is, right? Part of that could be their lack of training in Photoshop, or it could be that they're Photoshop freaking masters and their color settings were wrong. Now, I can't tell you what color settings to use because it's different from printing company to printing company. I can tell you that in the book, we give a couple, like 2 or 3 baselines, and you can see mine on screen right now. This would be one I would use on like glossy paper quite a bit. But these numbers determine how those RGB colors are changed to CMYK colors. It's also a reason why it's not a good idea to color in CMYK in Photoshop if you don't know what you're doing, because no matter what you put in this box, once you're in CMYK mode, any changes you make aren't constrained by these numbers at all. So you think, oh, I put in a 280 ink limit. Photoshop won't let me go beyond 280. It's not true. It's not true at all. It won't let you convert more than 280, but once you're in CMYK, it'll let you do whatever you want. It won't stop you from making all the mistakes in the world. You can make colors that are too dark, colors that are too saturated, and you can make a mess of things. So that's one of the reasons that we always say, work in RGB, convert to CMYK, unless you're an absolute expert. And then, of course, by all means, do whatever you want. So, if you're getting unexpected results, it could be you, it could be your monitor, it could be a lot of things. It could be the color settings. So again, like a lot of things in Photoshop, it has all these tools and all these abilities to do what we want. But because it has all those tools and abilities, if we don't know how to use them, we can also get unexpected results that we don't want.
Right. Okay. Last couple of things. Storage. Do we answer storage already? Oh yeah, we
I think
talked
so.
about that.
I think
yeah.
so. If you're getting though that warning, about the scratch disk full, then you either need to offload files off your computer or get an external drive you can use as a scratch disk or work with smaller Photoshop files. Which for most of us, that last option is not an option at all.
Right. So the part of the reason that we still use channels and stuff is to keep the files smaller, because also
A channel uses 1/3 the space of a layer.
and what you don't think about too is that, like, for us, we're uploading and downloading files all the time. So Howard Porter will send us one of his pieces of art and it will be 250 megs. And so then you're going to color on top of that, right? So, I mean, these are giant files. And so we have come up with ways to make those files smaller, because not only do you have to have them on your computer, which you need the storage for that, but you're going to have to up and download them. So what if your internet isn't great? So there's other things to keep in mind there as well. Okay, let's see. I know this is geared towards comics, but would this method work on a piece that has live edges? What does that mean? I just stole that off the chat. Is that you, Jesse?
Explain me what you mean
It
by
was me, he said.
by live edges. Sorry.
Is this grayscale? Is that what you're asking about?
No, more of a piece where the colors don't end at a panel border, like they may phase out or.
Sure. Yeah. There's no reason that wouldn't work. You mean like something that just fades away into white or into the paper color or some other color? Yeah. There's no reason. You know, you might have to do your layer setup a little bit different or something. Yeah, it would work just fine. I know we've had comics that had white panel borders or even like soft white panel borders and stuff. So I mean, yeah, the technique will do pretty much anything you want to do, but there's no reason you couldn't do that.
All right, and then the only other one we had was about Christian Ward.
Oh yeah. So that technique is a little bit of like cut and grad or cut and brush and a whole lot of overlays. So like when we showed about how to put like the wallpaper on, if you look at that art, you can see it's all in there, like a lot of like texture overlays and stuff that are being put on top of the color. And then, you know, they're playing with the layer mode and the layer opacity to get those effects. So the underlying rendering isn't that complicated. It doesn't appear to be much more than like some simple cut and grad. And then their color choices are brilliant, so that's really good. And then again, lots of I don't assume it's him, but lots of you know, textural things put on top of that to get those effects. So yeah, if you are comfortable with the techniques or get comfortable with the techniques, that would be not too difficult to replicate that look.
And then the only other question is that are y'all hiring? That was a cute one.
Well, it is a lockdown, COVID shutdown, and everything's really slow right now, so I don't have a good answer for that.
Well, Brad would have a good answer for that anyway. He doesn't have any.
I'd say talk to Christy.
The typical in a normal time when it's not COVID and things are running normally, most people start out, no matter how great they are, unless you are a published pro that we know you, then you start out as a flatter and you prove your wherewithal. And really that's to see what kind of methods you use. And then
and ability to make deadlines and be professional and
do what I say. I mean,
not be showing art on the internet before it's published.
And that's a big deal too, which you don't think about is we work on licensed properties. You cannot share, you cannot live stream Twitch, whatever you're coloring on, right? Because this is intellectual property that is not ours. And so if you give away something, you're in big trouble. And so we sign NDAs and non-disclosures for almost all the companies we work with, and that means all of our employees sign them too. So there's lots of things like that. But anyway, you start with as a flatter, and some people right away move up, some people never move up. Sometimes we get a project and we're like, hey, this seems like your style. Did you want to try out a page? Sometimes we just don't have anything. You know, we have a core of people that have worked for us for years, and then we supplement. So it just depends. The answer is, are you hiring right now? Nobody's hiring anything.
Yeah.
But
and not to say that we're happy to look at somebody's portfolio, of course, and give feedback or just hold on to it. But yeah, Christy's right. Pretty much nobody's hiring right now.
But
unfortunately.
But hopefully that all changes, you know. And part of it is that DC is one of our major clients, and they just had 60% layoffs. So, you know, that's a big deal. But that being said, I think I've mentioned this before, that there is a Facebook group called Hi-Fi Color for Comics, and we don't own it, we don't run it, but it is a place where people put up their art and get critiques, and Brian goes on all the time and will offer help, or if people have questions or whatever. Also, other of our employees go there, and so they will answer questions or chat or whatever, or former employees sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that's a good outlet. Also, I think we've mentioned too that we have a Patreon account. It's called Brian and Dr. Christie. And so we do videos about once every 2 weeks or so. We do private classes, we do group classes, we do all kinds of stuff through them as well.
For like more advanced training and stuff.
Right, for more personal stuff. And in January, we're going to move to very much more advanced. We used to do live boot camps versus dead boot camps, but we used
In
to
person, in real life.
There you go,
boot
boot camps, where you would come to Arizona for 3 days, and we would train you for 3 days. But obviously, because of COVID, we're not doing that. So we're thinking about doing that through our Patreon, starting in about January maybe. But again, we haven't really committed to that because it's going to be some work. But as soon as we figure out how to make it work. So anyway, there are other options out there, and we are obviously not the only game in town, right? There's lots of other people out there, and a lot of people doing their own thing, and all kinds of coolness out there. So
Yeah, I would say if there's one thing that's because of COVID is I think all the artists and colorists and writers are all going, okay, how can I create my own projects and stuff now?
Right. And so there's lots of coolness out there. And so the whole goal here is for you to have some tools and some tips and some tricks and things that you can go and apply into your own world now and be successful. Are there any other final questions, comments, thoughts that we can answer before we go on our final class? I've asked that the classroom be left open on the Google Classroom be left open so that you can download this. You should have at least until Wednesday. I've asked for Friday, but try to download. I'll put it up in the morning, and so try to download it by Wednesday just to be sure. I want to redo that page.
I saw that.
One of Jane's classes using this. Yeah, that's good. All right, then. I will post the video in the morning. Thanks, everybody, for
Thank you guys so
hanging out with
much.
us. It was good to meet you all.
I hope we see more of your work in the future.
Yep. Feel free to look us up other places. Bye.